this is my client, Kellye. He's someone that came to me, 2 months ago, and he'd been dealing with, some shoulder pain and things like that for a number of years. So I'm going to let him tell you his background, kind of what we've been working on and things like that. But I'm super excited to have you here, and I can't wait to highlight you.
Excellent. All right. So a little bit about my background. Played sports all through high school, primarily football. Started lifting weights when I was a sophomore in high school, which was roughly 4 to 5 decades ago. So it was very different back then. Was in Southern California, in the South Bay area of Southern California at the time. So actually went to a gym that at the time was kind of a bros gym back in the day. I mean, a lot of power lifters, heavyweight guys, and a bunch of us kind of small high school guys, relatively speaking, going in. But that was my first opportunity to see it, and they were pretty serious. And that was the time when steroid use was big. So a lot of those guys were in and out of the locker room with that. And so kind of a different environment, but kind of got me hooked on lifting. Have lifted pretty much on and off ever since. Never really super heavy because I was always doing other sports. Coming out of college, I was a racquetball pro at a club here in town, played tournaments once a month. Then at the same time, got into running, ran some marathons just to see what it was like. And then about 15 years ago, I thought I'd surfed as a kid. I thought I'd get back in the pool up here. I live in the Pacific Northwest. Started swimming, and to make it more challenging, I thought I'd swim with a 5-pound weight between my legs and hand paddles. So I had flat hand paddles to increase the shoulder workout. And after about 2 or 3 months of that, I developed some pretty acute shoulder pain. Ended up going to the doctor, just a regular doctor, told me the typical thing, lay off, don't do that anymore, just rest. And so I did for a while. It felt better. Got back in the weight room, was still playing some racquetball and noticed the impingement. And so really for probably the last 12 to 15 years, I've dealt with that, kind of accommodating the pain where it wouldn't go too deep on certain reps like a bench press or any particular movement that caused the pain. I would stop at the edge of pain and try to adjust the range of motion or whatever I needed to do for that. And then, not even too much. It's actually probably been about 6 weeks ago. Started trying to see a physical therapist. Obviously, saw Caitlin's thing on the internet, or actually on Instagram. Started following that and connected with her and started a program. And as an endorsement, probably 3 workouts in, I maybe not even 3. I emailed her and said, I can't believe the pain is gone, and it started going away once we hit the source, and that was really cool. That's kind of the background, which kind of led us up to within the last few weeks.
No, it's crazy because, you'd had this pain, and I don't want to say, it was constant or anything like that over the last 12 to 15 years, but you definitely been dealing with it off and on. And then, like you said, 3 workouts in, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like what is going on? And we built out like the strength program. And, obviously you come from a very well-versed lifting background. So you know your way around the gym. We just went ahead and added the strength stuff just to make sure like, we're firing on all cylinders. And so I think I've even thrown a couple newer things at you.
You have.
And so I guess tell us like what all you had tried, because I know, we had talked about a few things on that first call, and things that maybe did help or maybe things that had some lackluster results.
Yeah, I mean, I tried yoga on and off, and yoga had certain benefits, but again, it didn't address the particular impingement that I had. So yoga, chiropractic, just a little bit more for other stuff than that, but try to throw that in there. Did some acupuncture before I had to get a knee replaced, and kind of try to throw it in with that. A variety of different stretching and really some different workout routines I'd pick up on the internet stuff from something, but none of them were addressing the source. They were more workarounds.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. So fast forward, we jumped in 3 workouts later, starting to feel some relief, starting to feel better. You had like a little bit of a twinge on your dumbbell bench earlier this week, but I think one of the things you said was like it felt so good that I just wanted to bump up. You ended up taking 45-pound dumbbells for a ride with dumbbell bench, right? So
Yep.
it's pretty insane. And been golfing, fly
Yep.
fishing, all of those things as well. And I know you'd said like this routine helps me even with those things, like, it helps me kinda limber up, loosen up. I'm feeling better on the range. Obviously, you sent me a couple pictures of those, rainbow trouts, so, loving that. So, I guess, what was the assessment process like for you? Like, we obviously are very big about trying to find the root cause of whatever the issue is. So, what did the assessment look like, and maybe how did you feel about doing it online versus, having someone, like, put hands on you?
You bet. So yeah, because I like to do a variety of things, and I fly fish every couple of weeks, and that's a lot of shoulder work. Golf is a couple times a week. That's a lot of shoulder involvement. Um, I was leery of going to to a physical therapist to kind of get in that more traditional response of take 3 months off, especially at my age, because anytime you take off, you go backwards, and you go backwards not only in terms of things like strength, but also mobility. And so my concern in doing the assessment piece was I had a feel for what I thought it was because I'd been told repeatedly it was a shoulder impingement. I guess whether that's technical term or layman term. So when we did the assessment with you, it only took you probably 3 moves or 4 moves you had me do. And you could say, yeah, I see that. I know what it is because it's common. And I think that made it much easier because then I thought, okay, if it's that common, you've got a strategy for not only how to address it, but one of the concepts that attracted me to what you do is the concept of we want to fix the problem while you're in the gym and not backing off for any period of time.
Yeah.
Um, so the assessment and doing the assessment online, frankly, was at least as good as anything I could have imagined going into see a physical therapist because I think the physical therapist, I talked to a number of people around town, a number of my buddies, um, and got some mixed reviews. And I didn't want to go, you're kind of pot shot out there to try to find somebody you're compatible with. And their assessments are no more in depth than I think what you were doing online because you could identify the problem, which is the result. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't take, if it takes 10 tests, it takes 10 tests, but if it only takes two or three, that's a lot better.
Yeah.
Right.
And you obviously have a little bit of like I don't wanna say a personal bias, but, you came into this having some people very close to you not have success with the traditional model and, like,
Right.
obviously, I think that helped kinda expand your horizons. Well, like, that didn't work, so what's next?" Give a couple moves that you feel like really just highlighted or seemed to help the most, like, in those early days.
I mean, I think the two that jumped out to me is the scapula rotation where you're laying on your back with your arm extended
Hmm,
because it was such a simple move. There's no weight involved. And so I'm thinking, okay, I feel like I'm flopping my arm, but after a couple of times, you're going, wow, my shoulder is actually loose. And so that one was really good. And the band, the scapular raise where you've got the band over your shoulder, we found out later I didn't have the band probably high enough on my arm because I had it where bicep and shoulder met instead of all
yep,
the way up on shoulder. I still got the result. And I think in the last week, I've switched it to where it really should be, which is much more up on the shoulder, on top of the shoulder, and can tell the difference. And both were not complicated moves, no contortions involved or heavy machines involved or any. I didn't take a second person to hold me in place or any of that stuff.
right.
There was immediate relief. So those two were great. I mean, they've all been good, but those two were probably the highlight because how quickly and how simply they worked.
Yep. Yeah, and honestly, that's what it takes is, finding a couple movements, and I think the misconception that a lot of people have is, like, we have to have some long drawn out mobility routine, but honestly, if we had those 2 plus maybe a couple of other exercises in your warm up, like, what's that gonna take you, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then you're ready to rock and roll for lifting, so, um, yeah, no, I think that's crazy, and some
Here's,
Go ahead.
I mean, from my professional background throughout my career, one of the things I saw was there's a tendency for some people to judge value by complexity.
Yep.
And I think we fall prey to that, especially in today's environment in the gym, right? How many different machines do you have? What does this do? I
Yep.
mean, supplements are the same thing. How many different supplements you need for this or that? And I think my approach has always been to judge value by the results versus, and frankly, the simpler the better for me. And
Yeah.
so getting away from the complexity and saying, okay, here's 5 things. Do these 5 things. It'll take you 20 minutes, give or take. Um, and getting the results, the complexity adds no value to that. So it was great for me.
Yeah, and one of the things I always tell people, like, when I'm on calls with them is, "Hey, look, like, you're busy, I'm busy. I'm not trying to give you a full-time job because I don't want another full-time job just trying to move numbers." So, yeah, I think, and I think this is part of the problem with the Instagram videos and stuff is, like, how can we make this one movement look super sexy and make it look so complicated and look new when in reality, you just need a couple movements that's gonna highlight your specific issues.
Well, don't you think it's also to me anyway? It gets intimidating because some of the videos we see on like Instagram, you got these guys that are clearly bodybuilders, and all credit to them. But seeing them do a move with, like, there was a guy doing incline bench the other day, and he had 100-pound dumbbells, and I'm thinking, okay, that's pretty impressive. The guy was probably 6'5" and well over 300 pounds, and that's impressive. But relative to me, it had no value because I'm thinking if I hit 45s or get up to 55s or something at some point, I'll be fine and I'll get the same pump and the same workout. But so there's also there's not always a correlation between what they put out there and most people.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the thing too. It really comes down to like, what are your goals? Like, where are you at? What are your goals? And how do we bridge that gap? I like to use the example of kind of going back to the root cause stuff. I like using the example of, hey, I want to take this vacation, wherever. I know you're big into like Colorado and things like that. So you want to go to Colorado, but unless you have that starting point of where you're actually at, you're not going to
Mhm.
have the turn by turn instructions to bridge that gap to get where you want to be.
Yeah.
And so I do think knowing your goals and knowing your starting spot, like you can build out any plan that's going to get you from here to here. We just have to have that clear starting spot and we have to have that
Mhm.
clear goal.
Well, I think that's one of the values of the intake form, and maybe all PTs use a similar approach. But when I filled out your intake form, it forced me to um, put more definitive goals down, and not even necessarily quantify them because some of them were qualitative, focusing on lack of pain or erasing the pain or gaining certain range of motion back where you can't really put a number, but some were numbers related too. And I think that was a huge part of the process for me because then I got something much more specific that I know I'm shooting for than just feeling better or
Yep.
not having pain. Pure, there's got to be more to it than that.
Yep. It's, and measuring it, right? Like, having that goal and then knowing how to measure it because, I dropped this in the Instagram chat the other day, but it was like, that which you measure improves, right? So, we're tracking the weights, we're tracking the pain, we're tracking all those things, and we're also comparing it to where you said, like, goals wise, where you wanna be, so yeah, no, I think you're spot on. I'm not shocked. Spot on with it. Okay, so I guess, one of the last questions and then we'll start wrapping up. What do you feel like, if someone's out there kind of struggling like you were off and on for years, like what piece of advice would you give them when it comes to training with pain, training around injury, things like that?
Yeah, I think the best piece of advice is get the pain addressed early. It doesn't fix itself, and I think the danger is the tendency is you tolerate it, but you're really not tolerating it because you're adjusting the movements
Yeah.
or the workouts. When I got my knee replaced, which is about 11 or 12 years ago, it was because I'd run a lot, doing some marathons, doing some long term relays, and some stuff like that. Well, I lived with the pain to the point that I was wearing the last year and a half. I was wearing the same knee bracelet an NFL lineman wears. I was wearing it except when I slept at night. So going to work, walking around because of the pain, because it would pull. It was the only way I could ease the pain, right? And that was dumb. I mean, um, so rather than go through all that, or I see guys in the gym all the time and wearing sleeves, and sleeves for warm. I mean, the muscle are great, but if it's supposed to have some offsetting effect of pain you've got, why wouldn't you get the pain addressed? So that'd be my best recommendation is go in early and see if you
Yep.
can get it fixed.
Yep. 100%. I like to say avoidance isn't rehab, right? It's not a fix.
Right.
You're just avoiding the issue. So, no, love it. Obviously, you referred a certain special someone over.
I referred my daughter to you, and we discovered that you two have very, very similar personalities, which has got its good sides and its bad sides, right?
Yep. Yep. For sure.
Type A's, yeah, you say that.
Yeah. No, it's fun to kind of poke at her a little bit and just be like, "Well, your dad's my favorite.
Yeah.
Your dad's my favorite."
She's taking that personal because that's how I raised her. So it's a challenge.
Exactly. Outside of her, is there anyone that you feel like, would benefit from the program? Any certain type of person that you feel like would, just come in and absolutely crush the program? Like, is there any kind of person that you can
Yeah,
think of?
yeah. I mean, I've talked to um, the buddies I hang out with. One of them is the guy that's going in for shoulder surgery, but he's so far down the path. He's already been cut on once and gone through two cortisone shots that last for 18 to 24 months. So he's so far down that particular path that it'd be hard for him to change at this point because the damage has already been done internally. But I've got a couple other friends that I'm talking to because we're all in our mid 60s, early to mid 60s, and we're all very, very active still. Um, and so as we get the aches and pains, recognize it was something that may, even if you think it's age related, it may not be. So getting it checked, and even if it's age related, I think what you've shown me is there's options out there, even if it's age related, you can still address the source.
Yeah.
And I think that's really critical before the age related part becomes a chronic condition,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, so I mean, there's many more people obviously in their 60s now that are active that used to be highly active. And so the friends I have, whether they're golfing or weightlifting or the buddies I hang out with a lot, I'm encouraging them all if they've got an issue to say, okay, think about your options here. And again, I love your approach because you don't have to stop to do the approach. And that's the biggest fear most of us have is stopping and then starting is really tough.
Yeah. Yeah, and I honestly think that's what keeps a lot of people from seeking help and trying to deal with it on their
Mhm.
own is because they've been told so many times or they've heard horror stories of, yeah, the doctor just told me to take some time off, get the shot and then I came back and it was like twice the uphill battle that it would have been just dealing with the pain. And so I feel like a lot of people just put their head in the sand because, they've been told poor advice or they're kind of afraid of what's going to be recommended, and so I think that that's huge and just trying to get it out there that, hey, like, you don't have to take time off the gym, and even if you and I, like, obviously, I know there's a couple, like, gym restraints, right? Um,
Right.
but even if we never go back to a barbell bench, right?
Right.
My goal is to not avoid those movements or anything like that and get you back there. But
Yep.
at the same time, early in the rehab, even if we have to do a neutral grip, bench press or a floor press or anything like that, there's usually some kind of way that we can stay active. We can still like build progress. One of the things you talked about too is you and Alyssa had talked, your daughter, you
Mhm.
you guys had talked about like the tempo and those
Pace.
things. While it's a little bit of a different challenge, I think you guys can probably see like, hey, this is making my muscles work. We're getting a good workout in while also respecting the pain and everything like that.
Yeah, I think maybe a couple things. One is the last couple of years when I was wearing the heavier knee brace, I mean, just progressively heavier knee braces. My doctor had me taking 4 leave a day, 2 in the morning, 2 at night. And because he said four was kind of what you could do without doing damage. And he does a lot of work for the track athletes here in town. So he's got some good credibility. But perpetually taking 4 leave for 10 or 12 years was not a viable option. I think. And so I think that's just, and then the other piece I was going to mention is to your comments, Caitlin, is also my goals are not, I'm not going to bench 350 pounds again.
Mhm.
And I have no interest in trying to bench that. Um, and so hitting, dumbbells at 50 or 55 or whatever it ends up being is going to be sufficient.
Mhm.
I'd much rather do that on my weekly routine than I know you've got lifters that are still going for personal PRs or per PRs and matches. And I think at a certain age range, you got to keep doing that. I think it's part of the push. I'm past that age range now and have no interest in popping a bunch of weight on a barbell like I used to have. Just I
Yep.
don't need to do that anymore.
Yeah. Well, it's different, kind of going back to the goals, and knowing what you're training for. And one of the things that you are training for is that longevity. Like, can I still do all of these things that I actually enjoy doing? And like, how do we get there versus,
Yes.
forcing you to be like, no, I want you to hit, this barbell bench or, whatever. And so I think that that's where knowing your goals and kind of that healthy aging, the functional lifestyle, things like that is crucial.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Spot-
Well, is there anything else you wanna add before
No,
we up here?
obviously I'm enthusiastic about what you're doing. I love seeing the chats on Instagram and seeing where different people are at. And kudos to all of them because you can see the progress they're making, and it's a good reminder that they're all very different paths, um, and that's important. They keep it that way, but there's enough shared information there that's valuable, and it's encouraging, obviously. So it gets a little motivation going.
Yeah. Well, I'm honestly just so tickled at the results that you've been getting and, super blessed to know you and have you in the program, and, can't wait to keep crushing it with you.
Absolutely, we'll plan on it.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Yeah.